I'm not a big fan of the so-called sightseeing classes in American universities. I think they're almost universally awful. And the only schools in which they are really well done, uh, the teachers tend to be tyrants, and it's a brutal thing. I mean, I monitored a class at a well-known conservatory where somebody flubbed the syllables and was sent to the corner of the classroom to practice while everybody else. I mean, it's just short of giving a dunce cap to somebody. Uh, yeah, a couple basic things. The fluent soul misers that Job referred to from Spain and Italy and France learned these things when they were quite young. And so, in terms of a language, this is what would be called F1, your native language. And it should be remembered that historically, solfège was training in musical literacy. Now, it could extend to training in vocal technique, but oftentimes those exercises had different names, the gorgegi and things like that. They were for professional singers, but it really was training in musical literacy, and you learned a first language. And it was foundational then because you could talk about music and the students would know what you meant. Now, whether that was using the Guidonian hand, or not, I mean, there's all ways to achieve that, but it's a first language. Now, in the university setting, today you have an 18-year-old, and you're basically teaching them a second language. But frankly, you're not going to give them what they need to learn the second language. You're going to assign them a solfège. They will sing it poorly, out of tune, and with the wrong syllables in all the important places. And then you will move on to the next exercise. And you will do that for 2 years. The student will pass the course and you'll declare victory. But it's an awful result. I mean, any conservatory in North America, if you walk by a class in sight singing, you will hear what sounds like a really bad chorus with about half the people sharp and about half the people flat, and all of them trying to figure out whether it's do or sol or mi. And of course, then add in what I call the fee, fi, fo, fum system, where you not only are supposed to say what scale degree it is, but whether it's flat or sharp or whatever. I mean, a beauty of the old Italian system was it worked perfectly for Palestrina, and it works perfectly for Webern. Okay, if you try it. It doesn't pretend to know what every note means at every minute. Even Feti, the mid-19th century French theorist who claimed to have invented tonality, he really did. He said he had this sort of Saul of Tarsus moment where he said all the false doctrines fell in shreds around about me as the truth of tonality shone through. So anyway, he said that during sequences he completely lost track of what the key was, and then it would emerge on the other end of the sequence. And maybe musicians have had this experience with Bach, with sequences in Bach, where he gets in one key and then he'll shift it on as you just take a little half step here or there and it moves it along. It's interesting that Feti said that really he was an advocate of partimenti, and he said harmony. It only took about 6 weeks to teach harmony. What the subject was, but learning to make harmony then took much longer. I was struck by Nick talking about how simple some of these things are when you really get into them. And, in the French conservatory, they were quite open about this. I think it's a stunning fact that the only stable sonorities are 1-3-5 and 1-6. That that is harmony. That's it. That's the total subject. Now, you can make it more complicated by introducing counterpoint. You can make it more complicated by introducing schemas and try and study the sequence of things. But the actual core is really simple. What solfège in the past had in its favor was the richness of the study. Can we do screen sharing?
We can, yeah. What would you like to show?
I would like to show an example from Cherubini. This would be in probably the 1840s.
Okay, just tell me what it is. I'll find it.
Okay, it's IMSLP. It's the Solfège du Conservatoire by Baptiste.
Okay, I'll try and look for it.
Book 4, first page. And I'll just talk while you're looking.
Okay.
But what you're going to find is the first page that has a theme. It's solfège, and I should emphasize that in Naples and Paris, solfègi were accompanied. The master played the harmonies, so you always heard melodies in a harmonic context. Okay. If you think of a language class, you have endless exercises that say, in whatever language you're trying to learn, something like, I went to town and saw a man. And then you say, I went to town and saw a woman. And then you say, I went to town and saw a house. And so you learn these things to such an extent that you become automatic. And you can say, I went to town and saw a car, right? Those kind of exercises with substitutions, you learn a construction and you learn substitutions in it. In the Neapolitan and French way of thinking, this was variation. Is you learn a construction and then you learn to vary it, and in a way that teaches melodic analysis. I mean, Nick has done amazing work in showing how, in a sense, Neapolitan solfeggio was a kind of ongoing melodic analysis. In other words, you could simplify what was written by singing a one syllable to a more complicated pattern, right?
Well, why don't I let it load, and why don't we go to some questions that the audience kind of prepared, and then while this is loading, Professor Gjerdingen, we can come back to that. So,
in case we never get there, let me just finish it off by saying It's about a 12-measure theme. The theme has a double cadence in it. It has a opening sort of bergamasca pattern. Then it has a monte. Then it has a cadence. And it is followed by 40 pages of variations. When you finish those 40 pages, having sung the melody and having that same accompaniment played actually 57 times, you know these patterns. So that's the beauty of the old kind of solfège, where it wasn't enough just to pass the course. You were expected to internalize this stuff. Okay, so we have a little cadential progression. Somewhat like the beginning of the Jupiter Symphony. Okay, then we have a double cadence, basically. Then we have a monte. And then another cadence. Okay, now come 57 variations, and you have to sing every one. When you finish this, you'll never forget this lesson. It's just part of you. It goes on for 40 pages. Then you have a fugue prelude that uses the monte pattern that you just learned, and then you start a fugue. And this is solfeggio.
57 variations. It's astonishing. That's a good education.
That's how many, let's see, I think Heinz puts 57 varieties on their ketchup bottle. But it's an amazing exercise. You know, it's worth remembering how intense this training was. And of course, this was for 10, 11, 12-year-olds at the Paris Conservatory. And so they got wonderful training in this kind of stuff. You know, in a later book, I show a comparison of Claude Debussy and Gabriel Pierné, both realizing the same harmony exercise. And oddly enough, Debussy was better at recognizing the Italian schemas in the exercise. I mean, they really learned these things.
Right.
Now, they went off and did truly original music, but it was on a tremendous foundation.